Good morning, everyone, and thank you ever so much for taking time out of your days to come and listen to me talking about some security updates or announcements that we gathered from a recent visit to Seattle. I'll come on to that in a second. So my name's Matthew Richards. I'm head of secure digital transformation at Cocho. So before we actually crack on into the content, I just wanted to make a few things or make you aware of a few things. Today's webinar is being recorded. We'll share the recording and the slide deck later this week, so that will happen pretty quickly. If you want to ask a question, please use the Q&A panel that you should see in your menu bar at the top, where you can see it's highlighted there in the picture. There's quite a bit of content I want to go through, so we'll see if we've got time at the end to cover at least some of those questions. That's what I'll aim to do, but if we don't for whatever reason, then we'll absolutely follow up with those questions. But please, as and when I go through the various bits of content, if you have a question or something you want to ask, then please pop it in. All those will be captured and we will follow up on them. So this morning we're going to talk about a number of different things. So really born from a visit or an invite that we had actually to the Security Engineering Summit in Redmond, Seattle, week before last now. So some interesting things. Obviously, there's not a huge amount of detail. A lot of the detail is still under NDA, but hopefully a lot of the content will sort of guide you through the direction that Microsoft are taking, both with Entra in terms of a zero trust approach and unified endpoint management with Intune. So two very, very clear engineering focus areas for Microsoft. And within Entra, we'll one of those components is global secure access. So we'll talk specifically about some updates on the security service edge, which is a component of the global secure access solution. We'll then talk a little bit about identity threat protection response, which will be more about a set of observations and best practice areas that are becoming increasingly important to focus on as we move forward. And then we'll have a little bit of time to do a bit of a wrap up, share with you some things that Cocho can offer, and give you the opportunity to potentially, if of interest, to reach out. So I've mentioned the security engineering partner Airlift. I mean, this was quite a big deal. So if we think about the number of partners that Microsoft have globally, we're talking way in excess of 400,000. That's a huge, huge number. And this event, only around about 150 partners globally were invited. It's an invite only. So we were extremely honored to be invited to this. This is where we get, a one-to-one relationship with the various engineering representatives, opportunity to share feedback from our experiences working, with yourselves and other clients, and feeding that back into the engineering teams to help make their products better. But this was a big deal, and the picture you can see on the screen was the auditorium that we were in. We were fortunate to have to get 4 invites to this. So 4 of us from Cocho went, all focusing on different areas. There's a lot of content and some exciting things that I'd be happy to share with you in as much detail as I can. Okay, so a couple of slides just to sort of set the scene, I think, and a bit of a refresher. Zero trust is something that we've been talking about for a long time, and I think Microsoft have done, made some really great strides into their product set to help people like you achieve that zero trust architecture. If we think about zero trust, the 3 core principles that are the foundation of zero trust, the first one is verify explicitly. The second one is use least privilege. And the third one is assume breach. So, and those 3 core principles apply to all of the 6 areas that you can see on the screen. Networks has been an area that Microsoft haven't had a compelling solution for, in terms of, embracing that zero trust approach. But now with the advent and the forthcoming global secure access solution set, this is now basically plugging that or putting that last piece of the jigsaw in. So that's exciting stuff. Again, looking at the landscape that we all work within, this again is sort of a refresher. We're all aware of this. We're all working in this highly distributed environment with lots of different things that we need to cater for, from networks, endpoints, different partners, or different devices, locations, so on and so forth. This is just increasing and increasing, and this is great from a productivity perspective, giving users and the organization the freedom to work in a way that is best for them. But it does also present a significant challenge in terms of managing that security footprint that it presents, right? A lot more risk involved, and therefore we need to have a very robust and holistic approach to how we manage that sort of end-to-end security. It's all about getting that telemetry at the various different aspects of this distributed environment and being able to react accordingly. And zero trust plays a very, very important role in tackling that. If we move on to the zero trust architecture as presented by Microsoft. So this is part of the Microsoft cybersecurity reference architecture. It's freely available to download. This is one of the slides in that deck, extremely comprehensive deck. So I encourage you to have a look at that to get some insight. But we've got a lot of the products laid onto this architecture here, which shows you how Microsoft, or what product from Microsoft is tackling that specific area. But if we look to the left-hand side of this slide, we've got, identities, we've got the endpoints, and it's all about managing, if we remind ourselves about the three sort of core principles: verify explicitly, use least privilege, assume breach, from that identity and endpoint left-hand side of the screen, right through to where that user is wanting to get to, whether it's accessing a file, a certain application, or a particular infrastructure component, and all the things that need to happen in between. And key to that is the central part of this slide, which is zero trust policies. And this is facilitated through the Entra conditional access policy engine. No doubt you're all familiar with that. It's been out for many, many years, widely adopted by almost all organizations that we work with, and continuously gets a lot of innovation, new features, and new capabilities. So it's really important that we focus our attention to make sure that all of our connections, authentication requests are subject to that conditional access policy engine, so we can attest to the risk and then deal with the assessment appropriately. And what we can also see is, I've mentioned already, we can, at each point on this slide, we can see the different product set. This is not an exhaustive set. Obviously, there are lots and lots of different components that play a role in almost all aspects here, but the key areas are certainly highlighted. So, none of what I've just said should be news. Things are becoming more challenging. Things are growing. We're getting more distributed. We're consuming more technology. If we think about the advent of generative AI, which we're all no doubt familiar with, things like ChatGPT and Copilot. Complexity is increasing, and therefore the things that we need to do and in respect of managing the risk and ultimate security for our organizations becomes more difficult. One of the messages from the Airlift that we attended a couple of weeks back was very much a simplification one. So I think Microsoft have acknowledged that things are getting extremely complex. I mean, that's a given, right? With the expansion of everything that we're doing and the distributed nature of that. But the tool set, then Microsoft product set, in terms of managing that, can get extremely complicated in terms of developing the right policies, reacting appropriately, and so on and so forth. So simplification is something that Microsoft have acknowledged and are making some some significant improvements actually to try and make it a lot easier for organizations like yourselves to embrace their technology and importantly to be able to manage it from an ongoing perspective. I think it's it's sort of really important to point out that having Microsoft at the heart of a modern IT stack, or the foundation, is something that really serves to provide a significant increase or capability around security, and the fact that that the way that we react to certain observations or telemetry that we detect. It's when we have that truly ground up integrated solution set from development right through to release, that's when we get the ability to do the cross domain coloration coloration, and in essence the extended detection and response capability, cross domain capabilities, getting all of those signals, consolidating them in and aggregating them into a single area and making decisions on that telemetry. That's when you get really accurate and rapid responses. There have been some significant, well, there will be some significant, a significant announcement by Microsoft made on July the 2nd. So keep your eye out for that. This is something that supports the overall or your overall ambition potentially in embracing a zero trust approach. So keep your eyes out on July the 2nd for an announcement. So focusing on Entra and some of the components that can help with providing or establishing a zero trust approach, I've put some of the technologies that may be of interest. So identity governance, this is really starting to ramp up in terms of its development, and providing the ability to tackle different sorts of provisioning activities necessary. So if we think about Microsoft Identity Manager, an on-premises application, Microsoft are very clear their strategy is cloud first. Until recently, things have been a little bit challenging in terms of provisioning using cloud technologies, but that seems to be improving significantly. So the identity governance aspect of Entra is receiving a lot of attention and focus in the engineering teams. We're working very closely with those teams as well to share the things that are needed by the clients that we work with, making sure that we're up to date with what they're doing. So some really interesting developments there, things that have happened over the last 6-12 months, and also a lot of things that will be coming as we move forward. Identity protection then is something that's really important as well as part of an Entra product suite to tackle that zero trust approach. This is where we assess the risk of sign-in and credentials and being able to make decisions through that conditional access policy engine. The addition of private and internet access management through the global secure access solution of Entra. This is sort of plugging that or fitting that last piece of the jigsaw in. For now, there will be others, but now we're able to capture that traffic using the GSA solution set and make decisions based on what's happening, basically, ultimately to protect ourselves and also to maintain control over your corporate information. And then the final piece in that list, or bullet in that list, is verified ID with face check. So this is something, verified ID has been around for a while. Face check is sort of is being talked about. I believe there's a public preview for that at the moment. But this is where, let's say, a service desk or a help desk analyst can actually verify that the person they're talking to is actually who they say they are. So it starts with a known good picture of that individual. They're asked to take a picture of themselves, and then there's a bit of AI magic that happens behind the scenes that gives that operative, that analyst, help desk, service desk analyst, the confidence that actually, this person is who they say they are. So it's closing that loop. Inbound API for Entra, this is quite a big deal. So this is enabling third parties or anybody to be able to provision accounts direct or programmatically through the Entra API. So this is quite a big deal because it now opens up the doors to a number of other typical, let's say, HR products, right? Cloud or SaaS-based products. So, HR typically being that source of truth. And when a new employee starts or moves or changes within an organization, that's typically reflected in that HR system. And we can drive activities based on that. And that could be provisioning activities into Entra and then subsequent provisioning activities from within Entra, and also tackling that life cycle of that user as well. So that's an interesting one. Local AD group management. So the ability to manage local Active Directory groups is something that's now possible with Entra through the Entra ID portal. I think I think we should all be very clear that Microsoft's direction here is cloud first, but they're trying to make things as easy as possible and break down the barriers to organizations to start thinking about, actually, we can maybe start looking at removing Active Directory from our organizations. Now, for some organizations, that's a massive step, and that's not something that's going to happen anytime soon, but it's becoming a reality for a number of organizations. So there's a bit of a stepping stone there to start helping you sort of provide the operational efficiency in terms of the current environment, and also breaking down those barriers to moving entirely to a cloud managed identity. SAP recently announced the retirement of their identity management platform. And the interesting thing here is that they've partnered with Microsoft. So Microsoft Entra ID will be the natural move from the SAP IDM platform, and Microsoft are working closely with SAP to try and make that migration as straightforward as possible. It wouldn't be a talk without mentioning Copilot or any form of Gen AI, but there's some interesting scenarios happening with Copilot in Entra, as there are with a lot of products actually. But with Entra, things like being able to ask Copilot questions of audit or activity logs, help you troubleshoot activities, start asking it to review conditional access policies, and so on and so forth. Some interesting things happening there with Copilot. Conditional access. This is an integral part of our, I guess, zero trust identity approach. And it's that central policy engine that I pointed out earlier. Now, we should all be trying to direct all of our authentications to Entra ID so that we can then subject them to that conditional access policy assessment and make decisions based on, the attributes of that particular connection. Conditional access is getting incredibly more complex and more difficult to manage. So what we'll see over the next sort of 6-12 months is CA evolving and becoming a lot easier to manage. So Microsoft have acknowledged this is quite a challenge for many organizations, and they're taking steps to improve it and simplify the process. Device-bound passkeys. So for those who have a particular interest in security, no doubt will understand the challenge that is token theft, right? So this is where somebody's authentication token is stolen and can be replayed, and it's a very real risk at the moment, and something that we should all be aware of and at least apply some mitigations to protect against it. But device-bound passkeys, and this by this I mean the ability to use the Microsoft Authenticator app as a phish-resistant authentication method is now possible through these device-bound passkeys. We can still do phish resistant without that through things like Windows Hello for Business and FIDO2 keys. But it's an interesting addition, and it's been long awaited, quite frankly. So that's coming very, very soon. From a unified endpoint management perspective, so this is in essence Intune, right? So the Intune engineering team were very clear with us in their key directional focus areas, and that was the platform, which is all about making sure that every platform, whether it be Windows, Mac OS, Android, iOS, etc., and Linux, will be catered for appropriately. They gave an interesting stat actually in terms of Mac OS, which was 20% of all corporate devices are now deemed to be Mac OS. or running Mac OS. So that's a significant proportion of the device estate, and therefore Microsoft quite rightly need to put the focus area into providing a very, very comprehensive and effective management solution for those platforms. And that's exactly what they're doing with Intune. So the amount of attention that Mac OS has had recently is very impressive. What they've got planned moving forward is even more impressive. So look forward to some significant advancements in the macOS management area, which is really important. Cloud PKI, you may have heard of this being announced relatively recently. This is quite a big deal. It's always a big challenge to manage PKI infrastructure. So this is the infrastructure that provisions certificates for whatever purpose that they're needed for. That can be quite a complex thing to do, and also complex to manage and secure. Now with the advent of Cloud PKI, we can have Microsoft manage all the tough bits of managing the certificate authority, and just allow you then via the interface to start provisioning appropriate certificates. And that's quite a big deal. Endpoint privilege management. Again, this is all about reducing or focusing on the use least privilege foundation or principle of zero trust. So this is very much encouraging people to move away from running as local admin on their devices. It's always a challenging and contentious area. Those who have it now are used to it. When you remove it, it becomes a headache. But endpoint privilege management allows you to manage that effectively. Now, to date, it's pretty good, but the roadmap that is ahead will really streamline how that works and make it far more efficient and effective from an IT administrative perspective, but importantly, making sure that user experience is seamless, so that they don't have to be waiting for ages to perform whatever privileged activity they need to perform on their endpoint. So the roadmap there is pretty aggressive, and we'll see some really interesting features coming out very soon. Enterprise App Catalog, again, another comprehensive focus area for Microsoft. So it's about not just focusing on their own apps and making sure that, you know, we can update Windows, we can update the M365 apps and all the rest of it. It's about holistically approaching, you know, the patching requirements for all organizations. And that includes thousands and thousands and thousands of third-party applications. So that's exactly what they're bringing with the Enterprise App Catalog. All of these, by the way, are part of, they're available separately on top of the Intune license, but also available as part of a suite, which obviously, as usual, is more cost effective, and that is presented in terms of the Intune suite. But the Enterprise App Catalog is getting a huge amount of attention. I think Microsoft said that they were releasing about 300 apps a month. They have the ability to release far more, but they're not going to do that until they verify and validate the approach with the vendors directly to make sure that their solution is absolutely, you know, as robust as it can be, and ultimately deliver a service to you that allows you to manage that third-party patching nightmare that typically exists in organizations. The final part here for UEM then is all around, or Intune, let's say, is the reporting capability. Is pretty rubbish, quite frankly, at the moment. Microsoft put their hand up to that. It's not great. They need to do a better job, and they have done a better job. So they've re-architected, redeveloped from the ground up the whole reporting and data platform for Intune. So that is going to be presented as the in various guises. It'll provide reporting capability, which is obviously the key area and key objective, but also in terms of providing advanced analytics to start surfacing some interesting insights about your devices within your organization, looking at device, you know, hardware health, software health, and if you know, and so on and so forth. So advanced data analytics or endpoint analytics will be always part of the Intune suite, but now based on a very new data platform. Continuing on with various other security components then from an SSE, or this is the Security Service Edge, part of the global secure access offering in Entra. That is still on track to be released second half of this year. What we can expect is definitely sort of Windows and Android clients being part of that, possibly macOS and iOS. macOS and iOS are currently in early access preview, so it depends how that goes, and Microsoft will only release to GA if the quality of those products are sufficient. And then Linux will follow. So Linux is definitely part of the roadmap, but they just want to make sure that those key and most common platforms are tackled properly first. In terms of this year, some developments that we can look forward to in terms of features in the Security Service Edge world, threat intelligence filtering, so the ability to take advantage of the vast amount of threat intelligence that Microsoft have and applying that to identify typical sort of attributes of adversaries, campaigns, nation states, whatever it may be. We can start then getting some insight into the activity through the SSE product as to again improving the security that these connections will have. Conditional access, receiving lots of updates for those who are looking at Secure Service Edge. You'll see a lot of this surfaced. Conditional access is the engine that really does that, what we call traffic capture for SSE to work, but there'll be further updates coming certainly this year. And also TLS termination are fully expect to be available at some point, possibly at GA. Kerberos SSO, really important, as well as SD-WAN integration. So this is SD-WAN third-party providers, big network vendors that provide SD-WAN capability, and making sure that the overall global secure access solution set integrates nicely with those solutions. So Microsoft are in deep talks with those vendors at the moment and are doing the appropriate work to make sure that that integration works well. Web filtering, so again, that's available now, but there are further developments in terms of context-aware FQDN and URL filtering. There's obviously all of the categories that we can allow or disallow, and we can subsequently report on activities as well. So that's going to get a lot of attention as we move forward. Then if we look beyond, what sort of things could we expect to see? Well, I think, once Microsoft have captured that network side of things, then we should expect things like the intrusion detection and protection type activities to be layered into that, including things like DLP, so preventing personal information, private information, corporate information, whatever you want to call it, from being exfiltrated, in most cases maybe unknowingly, to any sort of SaaS application. So a lot of work, I would have thought, is going into that area. And interestingly, BYOD was mentioned as well. So the ability to tackle personal devices with the Security Edge solution from Microsoft. Along the theme of simplification, Microsoft are looking to consolidate their agents into a unified XDR agent. So for those who are familiar, there are lots and lots of different agents at the moment that we need to deploy. There's Defender for this, Defender for that. There are lots of them. Can be difficult to deploy individually, difficult potentially to manage ongoing. Having a unified agent is something that presents a real improvement, and I think operational improvement as well. So scenarios such as enabling MDI on a number of DCs that already have MDE enabled, that should be upon release a right and click on board type activity. So a lot simpler, a lot more streamlined. And you'll see a lot of the XDR portal that Microsoft refer to now, a lot of consolidation happening there with lots of products, Sentinel being one of them in the unified portal, but other things are coming as well. There's, we're all aware of, again, generative AI. A lot of the adversaries are starting to use that technology creatively to improve their success rate in getting in and breaching organizations. Well, Microsoft are trying to stay, one or two steps ahead of that by also using AI to to provide attack disruption, right? To ultimately prevent those successful attempts. So there's a lot of interesting work happening in that area, a significant amount of work actually. That was a very big topic of conversation, and also raising the awareness of SaaS application security and also OAuth token management. Really important. We'll see a lot of this surfacing already in Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps in the app governance blade. That's where we can see what OAuth tokens have been provisioned and what risk do they present, and provide the appropriate controls to manage those. Following on from that, again, the consolidation into this XDR portal and enriching the amount of signals that Microsoft are able to correlate and analyze. We're starting to see the Defender for IoT for OT platforms now surfacing in the XDR portal, as well as some of the insider risk management in the Purview suite coming into that as well. So some really interesting scenarios and enhancements to the telemetry that's being collected happening there. Again, all surfacing in the XDR portal. And lastly here on the slide, just wanted to draw your attention to something that's relatively new, which is the exposure management blade in the security portal or XDR portal. This is something that aims to consolidate all the different sort of vulnerability visibility you have, all the configuration weaknesses maybe that have been detected, and consolidating all of those into exposure management as an overall sort of topic area, and giving you that curated environment to be able to manage and deal with the vulnerabilities in essence that are present in your environment. So encourage you all to focus on that. That will get a significant amount of attention from the engineering teams as we move forward. From an identity threat protection and response perspective, now this fact, I almost fell off my chair. I mean, if I rewind about 2, maybe 3 years ago, this, we were all aware of the low uptake, I think, of MFA. But even today, we have 52% of accounts in Entra that do not have MFA enabled. I mean, that's just, they're waiting to be breached. That's users with just a username and a password, right? So lots of techniques available today to, breach those sort of accounts. And a lot of these are automated, right? They're not directed. These are things, bots that just sort of go around, do things repetitively. So it's very much not a case of if, it's when those accounts get breached. So please, if any of you don't have MFA at the very least enabled for your accounts, please do that. Phish resistant authentication, I've sort of alluded to this already with device bound passkeys. If we look at authentication, we should always strive to look for the most secure type of authentication, and phish resistant is that. So that's Windows Hello for Business and the various guises that has, as well as FIDO2 keys, but also now with the Authenticator app with device bound passkey capability, is now presenting another option for phish resistant authentication. Really powerful, really secure, incredibly easy from an end user perspective, and something that is well received, and we've been waiting for a while, to be honest, for these things to happen. So it's good to see that they're coming. There was a lot of focus on, reducing privileged or using least privilege. I've already mentioned a few things about this already, but the amount of people that run with local admin rights and is huge, and moving them from local admin onto a standard user can be really challenging, certainly for certain types of personas. But this is where things like the endpoint privilege management or EPM feature of Intune or the Intune suite can really help with this. Some things need local admin and you can't get around it. EPM will provide that ability to manage that effectively and provide in essence, a just-in-time sort of approach to that. So again, reducing that security footprint to as small as possible. And there was a huge emphasis on any user that is having to run as a privileged account. Let's talk, let's mention the key one here, which is global admin. If you need to perform global admin or activities that require global admin rights, obviously we need to protect that using privileged identity management and have a just-in-time activation for that role. But really, we all should be using that account on a device that's been configured to reduce or mitigate the risk that a normal device provides. And this is the Privileged Access Workstation, or PAW. This is a device specifically configured and provisioned to reduce the potential of exploits. So remove local admin from your users, and where you have privileged accounts, consider the use of Privileged Access Workstation. Conditional access policies. This is something that actually at Coacher we've been doing for a little while, but there was a big emphasis on this at the Airlift, which was we need to review on a continual basis our conditional access policies. It's very much not a case of create them now and forget them. We need to keep reviewing them. Are they effective? Introduce new capabilities. So Microsoft, it feels like there's new stuff coming in on a weekly basis to CA. It's not quite that frequent, but it's very frequent. So we need to be looking at areas where we can further improve our security, further reduce the risk, and constant review. I would recommend at least biannually, twice a year, that you go through a process of reviewing these policies, embracing new capabilities, and further enhancing that security posture within your organization. And then we've also got, SSPM or SaaS posture management. This is something I mentioned earlier. This is something that's gone, again, having a huge amount of attention with the Defender security engineering team. And we'll see that surfacing. It's there already, but it will continue to grow in the Defender for Cloud Apps, which now Microsoft are calling MDA, by the way, in case you're confused by that acronym. I used to call it MDCA. It's now MDA. Another subtle sort of name change, but it's within MDA's app governance blade. All right, so go to the security portal, go to cloud applications, you'll see app governance in there. Again, that's about consolidating, simplifying the ability to manage things like those OAuth app tokens and overall SaaS security. Okay, so a lot of content there. I've come to the end of what I had intended to present. I'd just like to talk to you now just on how Coacho can potentially help you. If there were any things that were of interest, in what I said, there's a lot of things I wasn't able to go into detail with, but we're happy to potentially investigate the potential of doing that with you directly on a one-on-one basis, but we have to follow certain processes to make sure that we adhere to the NDA of those particular announcements. So, if you're interested, get in touch. But more broadly, this is what we believe sort of represents Coacho on a slide. I'm not going to go into this in any great detail, you'd be pleased to know, but we cover a very broad range of technologies, right? We are very much Microsoft focused. We're experts in that field. We provide expert professional services or consulting on those products. We provide the adoption and change management side of things with business transformation. And then we're able to put a wrap around it in terms of security, in terms of managed services and managed security services as well. So if you're interested in any of those, excuse me, then please get in touch. Something I thought that was particularly relevant for this talk was our Entra ID discovery workshop. This is something that will help you understand the art of the possible with managing the life cycle of your identities, using some of the new and forthcoming capabilities in the Entra suite, and seeing how a lot of that might work for you, simplifying that provisioning, that life cycle management, whilst also improving your security posture. really important aspect of security is that lifecycle management of your identities. And then from just a couple of other things, we can do a readiness review for global secure access. So if you're interested in any of the security service edge stuff I mentioned, then we can engage with you, talk to you, and make you or help you understand how that technology can benefit you, how it would maybe simplify a number of things, improve end user experience, improve overall security. Let us know. We're happy to talk to you about that. We'll do conditional access reviews. I've mentioned how important it is to do that. And also we have the potential of leveraging a number of Microsoft initiatives or funded initiatives to help make that particular first step a little easier, or that decision as to whether you want to go forward with a particular piece of technology a little easier. So get in touch either directly with your client manager if you've got an established relationship. If not, then contact us at the information at the bottom there. But with that, I was hoping to have some time for questions. I think I've gone well over my time, which I was somewhat anticipating. But rest assured, I can see a number of questions already in the Q&A. I do apologize not having time to cover those, but I will personally commit to getting back to you on each and every one of those questions. And finally, just a huge thank you, really. Let me go back to that slide. For taking time out. Hopefully what you heard was useful. You took one or two little nuggets of information away from that. Really appreciate your time, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much.